Hey, well, good afternoon. Walton County Sheriff Mike Atkinson, along with our trusty public information staff today, Ms. Corey DeBridnia and Deputy Anthony Bianco. And this is the Sheriff Live. So, for those of you that don't know, the Sheriff Live is where I speak to my bosses, the citizens of Walton County, and we kind of this is our virtual town hall, for lack of a better way of putting that. We try to do this like twice a month, depending how busy things are and what's going on. And if you don't, let's start with basic housekeeping. If you do not know where Walton County, Florida is, we're halfway between Pensacola and Tallahassee. We run from the Alabama line to the coast, and we are a full-service agency. We encompass a lot of different things here at the Sheriff's Office. We are traditional policing services. We are the county jail. We're animal control. We are medical north of the Chattahoochee Bay, and we are fire rescue north of Chattahoochee Bay as well too. So pretty wide-ranging things. And what I try to do is answer whatever questions you guys may have. Doesn't have to be just a local, but what I say is I can't guarantee that I know an answer. I guarantee that we'll try and get you one. So with that, been a lot going on in the last few weeks. So we'll try and give you guys to get some questions. I always give you kind of this caveat. I don't get to see your questions. They come to Corey, and she tries to read them as fast as she can, and Tony tries to help out. But the truth is, sometimes you come so fast that we jump through them. So just try to give her time to get caught up, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. But a lot of things, like I said, have happened in the last few weeks. Probably the most pressing here in the last little bit has been escape from Walton Correctional Institution on Friday afternoon.
Yeah, and Sheriff, just kind of walk through with people, once that happens,
Sure.
What is our role in it?
Yeah, so obviously we have a very close working relationship with the Department of Corrections. Secretary Dixon, who is the Secretary of the Florida Department of Corrections. And for those of you that don't know, that's about the third largest correctional system in the country. It's an extremely large organization. Anyway, I've known Secretary Dixon for a number of years, and we know the warden here at Walton CI, obviously. Good relationship with all the staff there. That inmate escaped. We were made aware that he was missing. And from what happens at that point is we, along with the Inspector General's office and staff from DOC, immediately start an investigation and start looking for this inmate. In this case, he was an orderly at the administrative offices there, and so that helped facilitate that. Been in prison for quite a number of years, was at this point really a minimum custody inmate, so was due to get out in a few years. So a little surprising, but again, you're dealing with inmates, and this is what happens. And so we were able to kind of stay on top of make an arrest. Our investigators were able to identify accomplices that pretty quickly after we became aware, make an arrest of two individuals over in the Choctaw Beach community. And then ultimately that inmate was arrested over in St. Johns County yesterday, I believe, yesterday or the day before. And he was arrested while trying to steal a car there, tried to run from them. They ended up having to use some force to get him back into custody, but he is back in custody of the Department of Corrections at this point. So He will face charges again here of escape. And obviously we have the other folks that are facing charges as accomplices.
So St. Johns County probably has charges on him too.
As well.
Will that work in a way where he faces their charges first and then he'll eventually?
I think it's probably best to go ahead and address those charges there. Obviously, the more serious charges, are going to come back here with the escape. And the way that works, if you don't know, an escaped inmate is considered an immediate threat to the safety of the community. So it's a whole different set of rules involving those folks. That is almost immediately a deadly force situation, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And it's something we all take very seriously. We did a couple of different what we call robocalls, where we notified people within about 3 mile perimeter of the prison itself of the escape once we became aware. Truthfully, we already thought that he was past that location, but we wanted to be sure. So we err on the side of safety and go ahead and notify everybody we can. And then the next time we got an update on location, which happened to be close to LECOM, which is the college, Lake Erie College of Osteopathic Medicine, which is right at the I-10 331 into Funiac Springs. That was a place that we knew that he was out there last, and so we went ahead and did a 3 mile notification from there too. Again, we believed he was already outside that area, but I can't take that chance. So we were able to just try to piece together where this individual was at. So we're very, very grateful that no one was injured in this escape. That is actually a really scary situation. Mm-hmm. So the Department of Corrections will go on and continue to, and I don't want to speak too much about how that ended up happening, other than saying their Inspector General's office will go through a security review, what happened, where were the breakdowns, how did this individual, was he able to do that? Again, I've known Secretary Dixon for probably 15, 20 years. Very thorough, and I know that they are on top of it. I've talked to him probably 3 times in the last couple of days, so they're staying on top of this.
Yeah. Great. So let me just go through a couple.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
We've had so far, Deborah McCormick says hello, as well
Hello,
as
Mr. McCormick.
Chris Me Bishop. Drew Davis says he's watching. So Trevor Zorn, whatever happened to the deputy that shot the dog and then was joking about it afterwards?
Yeah, we actually talked about it kind of at length a couple of weeks ago about the disciplinary actions. You can go back and watch that. We went all the way through that and what the ramifications for both of those deputies were. At this point, that discipline's been handed out and they're being dealt with the consequences, which is obviously going to go on for them for quite a while.
Yeah. Travis Richards, on number 3 on the poll, if it passes that marijuana becomes legal, will charges related to marijuana possession be dropped?
So will charges related to marijuana possession be dropped? Essentially, if it passes in Florida, there is a time period, kind of a cool down time period from the time of, so in other words, if it passed that night at midnight, it's not immediate that night, right? There's a couple of weeks, they got to get their ducks together. But I think at that point, it's pretty pragmatic that you have both medical cannabis in Florida, and then you would have recreational cannabis. The way a ballot initiative works in Florida now is it has to pass by 60%. It's no longer 50%. It's now 60%. So it's a pretty strong threshold to get past the first time. The short version is yes, I don't see any agencies really making an arrest once that ballot is passed, if it is passed. It will be problematic because keep in mind, under federal law, particularly like if you're an employee of somewhere, a lot of places have what's called a drug-free workplace. And because cannabis is a Schedule 1, they have not changed that now. They have not changed that to Schedule 1, which means it can't even be tested for medicinal purposes. So the federal law and the state law are immediately in conflict. We're not going to try and enforce the federal law here. From that standpoint, we'll deal with the state law. But I know that the federal government is currently in the process of reclassifying cannabis today. They're expecting a ruling on that. It could be tomorrow, could be 2 weeks from now, could be a month from now. All that being said, if it passes by more than 60%, the law fundamentally changes in the state of Florida.
Does that impact people who are already incarcerated for marijuana?
And there's nobody's incarcerated for, the short version of that is no, it doesn't. But I can tell you, I looked a couple of years ago, people aren't in prison because of cannabis, for just cannabis. Now you may have somebody, I think trafficking is 100 pounds. So most people are not, they're just not people in prison for just cannabis. They are in for something else from that standpoint.
Okay. Joshua.
Tony, it's 100 pounds, 125 pounds. It's something really high.
Yeah. Joshua Mills. So as a tow truck driver in Walton County, and with the issue of citizens that don't have a driver's license and passport only, why isn't there a 15 or 30-day impound put on those vehicles? And also, why don't they require a release to get the vehicles out?
That's a great question, and I'm going to have to be totally honest with you. I don't know the answer to it. I'm going to have to review that question and get you a better, because I just don't want to give you something that's not accurate or not true.
Okay.
So if you want to if you don't mind, send us that question. Write in. Tony's making a note of it right now, and we'll get you a good answer and put it back out there. I don't want to tell you something inaccurate, and then somebody has to come behind me.
And Josh, specify if you mean like a disabled vehicle, or are you talking about a vehicle involved with a crash?
Exactly.
Or are you talking
whatever the
like
situation may be?
If you can be a little bit more specific on like when you're towing those, that way we can find you a more accurate answer. Uriah Matthews, great seeing you today. Congrats on your achievement. Thank you for building the table.
Thank you.
Wayne McDougall, you've mentioned in several lives that you've done that you had nothing to do with the attempt of having volunteer fire districts dissolved, but an email has surfaced from the state of Florida that states very clearly you requested it to be on the agenda to have both districts dissolved. What is the miscommunication here?
Yeah, so a couple of different things. If you look at that, I actually just saw that email a few minutes ago. If you look at the email, you see that email's in December The APOGA reports are in, actually, we're back in March. What I've said is, and what I'll continue to say is, they have to meet the standards. Once we read those reports, very concerning, very, very concerning. So they either need to meet that standard or they need to be dissolved. That's kind of the short version in that. If you're asking me personally, either meet the standards or be dissolved. You can't have the option of doing it halfway when you're talking about people's lives. So I think that was probably the short version of it, yeah.
So you would have requested it to be on the agenda at that point because it had
100%.
already come out.
Just to be clear, let me be fully clear with it. I'll request it to be, I want it to be reviewed every year until they're met. So I've spoken to representatives about it. I will do that again, do it next week. Until these issues need to be cleared up. So.
Okay. Bobby Barnes, why is there no traffic enforcement on 30A and 393? The speed is out of control. Is it because of lack of manpower?
No, there's actually a traffic unit specifically assigned to that area too, by the way. So it just has to do with kind of the flow of where you're at on 30A, if that makes sense, because 30A is a two-lane road. So if I'm on 30A behind you or in front of you, and you don't see me, then it kind of looks like we're not there. But yeah, there's actually pretty heavy units there right now, and specific traffic units. Those are two TDC funded, Tourist Development Council funded units that run just traffic there.
Yeah, and there's one in every district, and we have 4 districts. So,
right. And
Bobby, I can pull stats for you on how many traffic stops are done in each district. And if you want to reach out to me, the email is pinned to this live, and I can get you those stats.
Yeah, and it's a little, I don't want to say it's uncommonly busy right now, but it seems to be busier traffic-wise than I've seen in a long, we were commenting on this today. It seems to be heavier traffic-wise than I've seen in a long time during this, during October. Mm-hmm. So I know that it's fall break for some places, but it seems to be a heavier traffic.
Stell Ranger commenting on the escaped prisoner. Thank you for protecting us, and hopefully they will be in prison for helping him. Yeah. What kind of sentence does aiding and abetting draw?
A lot of that really depends on what their record is, but it's a very serious offense. Abetting escape from a state prison is serious business. Yeah.
Ethan McCullough, is Walton County Sheriff's Office still doing the cadet program for deputy sheriff? We actually call the fire rescue side of the house is doing a cadet program for fire. We actually, on the sheriff's office side of the house, we have an explorer program.
Right. They're essentially the same thing.
Yes.
The short answer is yes. We try to, both for the deputy side, kind of you used to call it junior deputy or explorer post is what they're called now. And we've just started a fire cadet program, which we think is great as well too. So both of us trying to, get local youth, seeing, hey, what opportunities may exist for them in the future here.
Yeah, and trying to develop people who want or think that they might want a future in law enforcement or fire. Ethan, if you'll reach out, I'm more than happy to connect you with the person at the sheriff's office who has put a lot of time into the Explorer program.
Yeah.
Deputy Deborah Kendrick. Elaine DeRoche, does Walton County have a reverse 911 system?
Yes, we do.
And that was what we used.
That's what we use. I refer to it as a robocall, an automated call. That's essentially what it is.
Okay. Okay, and Joshua Mills did write us back. He is the tow truck driver. He was just referencing like arrest, DUI, and accidents. Like when they tow vehicles, if somebody does not have a license, or should they be allowed to impound?
Well, they still own the vehicle. So I can't really do that part.
I think that's confusing for people because they don't realize
somebody can own the vehicle and not have a license. You can own a vehicle. It just, you could have it, if it can be insured, somebody may be under somebody else's name. There's a lot of different ways. So it kind of depends a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Wayne McDougall says, you have stated over and over you had nothing to do with the request over and over.
Right. I'm going to try and help you because I'm not trying to embarrass you, but look at the date. That's December, right? The APOGA reports were done, I think they were done in March, right? And I try to be as clear with you as I can because the bottom line is meet the standards, don't endanger people, and you're accepting taxpayer money. So once we read those APOG reports, I am not happy about them. I don't think anybody was happy about them. I don't think Liberty or Argyle, and I think they're both trying to take steps to correct those. If they take steps to correct those, perfect. Because we're really not in a position to try and deal with all that right now. So if you can't, or if you refuse to do that, or in this case, if you remember around December, Liberty was actually shut down for failure to pay its its insurance. Yeah, thank you. Which we had nothing to do with whether or not they could pay their bills at the insurance. But that kind of stuff's got to be addressed. So yes, that's the short version of it.
Can you clarify too that the initiation of the OPAGA report was not at the request of the sheriff's office?
So
we can't request an OPAGA report to occur.
We cannot write an APOGA report. We actually, just like everybody else, when they came and interviewed us about APOGA, just like they interviewed everybody else, that's all been public record for, probably over 2 years now. Yeah. So at the end of the day, just do what you got to do. Do the right thing. Don't look at blaming somebody else. Do what has to be done. You're accepting taxpayers' money. Do the right thing. So, but look on the data. That should clear it up for you.
Joe Barnes, has DOT done a survey for a turn lane at 3280?
I do not know the answer to that. I do not know the answer to that. Be a good place for one, though, for sure.
Yes, yes. I do want to talk about. You had gotten up with Superintendent Hughes a while back, and I heard some people talking today about school being back in session and how we are growing so rapidly. That they're building schools, they're trying to catch up with the amount of schools. You wanted to get with Superintendent Hughes to come up with a game plan, like have a 10-year plan, and you wanted to get a board together. Are you still looking at doing that?
Yes. So what happened is, because there was elections ongoing and that we thought there might be change in board staff, we said that probably needs to wait until the makeup of the county constitutionals and the Board of County Commissioners is set, because you wouldn't want to do it and then have a change. In this case, we had a change in a couple county commissioners. You want the people going to be on the board for the next couple of years. So we just asked, I reached out to a facilitator to come in and try and get that together. So we're just trying to get everybody on the same schedule now. All the new board members will be in place in November. And so from there, we should be able to start those meetings. But it just didn't seem prudent to do it before, when everybody's in the middle of an election. So,
what do you hope the goal of that is?
Well, I think just from a public standpoint, so they can see, as we plan for the future, what facilities are needed, what kind of expenditures you're talking about, where things are going to be built in the future, and really so that we, as the elected officials, so I know what the clerk of court needs, so the Board of County Commissioner knows what the tax collector needs, or the supervisor election. It's important to know where the school district is building schools, so that we all are kind of on the same page, because you're talking about spending really, by the end of in excess of $100 million. And so it's just important for us to all be aware, and for the public to have some input, where these facilities go.
Yeah.
That's who it serves ultimately.
Yeah. And one affects the other, right?
One affects the other a lot. Yeah, absolutely.
You want to have
roadways, roadways, fire stations,
close
the whole
by.
9 yards. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Christine Bacon, there's a standalone speed limit radar on 20 near Choctaw. How can Freeport get a similar one on Business 331 at the Blueberry Road curve in front of Destiny Worship Center, Freeport and Lucky Star? Thank you. And I think they have one now assigned to each district, but Choctaw is unfortunately in the Freeport district.
Yeah.
So maybe a district lieutenant can move one there. Maybe we can move one from a different district.
So Bart Smith is our district lieutenant. We'll get with him when we get off here and see if we can get that kind of adjusted.
But I live right there, and I know that it's a people hustle around that curve for sure.
And any speed is too much there.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's
Well, you have a school, a church, and then you've got a light coming up. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brandy Helms, how do you feel about an employee being fired for minor violations versus being arrested and keeping their job?
I apologize. I don't know what. We have to a little more context. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. Joe Burton, the crosswalks that go across 98 and Inlet Beach are treacherous for pedestrians and drivers. Any thoughts on changes to these intersections, Orange Street and Walton Lakeshore Drive?
So what's problematic about that from us, obviously that's a DOT controlled, or as far as the laws in regard to the pedestrian there. The pedestrian in Florida has the right of way, which, to me, I like the idea of it being lit up where you have to push it and have an actual crosswalk. I think that works a lot better. I think it's safer. But, I don't get to make that decision. That's ultimately a DOT. And if it's a county road, you can check with Public Works. But I think where you're talking about is still a state. She said Walton and...
Well, and Joe, forgive me, they just built the underground pedestrian walk in Inlet.
Right.
So I think by doing that, they were trying to encourage people to walk down to that intersection and not cross 98 at Orange Street and Walton Lakeshore. But obviously, if you're not from there and you're visiting and you're only there for a week, it may take you some time to learn that. But he's absolutely right. I mean, that curve coming from the bridge is treacherous for pedestrians because people don't go 45 through there.
Yeah, for sure.
And you're coming from a different county into our county, and it just the speed limit changes. But I think the hope was to get them to use the pedestrian underpass, which is now open, by the way. I think it's been open about a month, if I'm not mistaken. Melinda Downs, I'm assuming since it's an ongoing investigation, you can't comment, but was there any help from anyone inside the prison to aid in the prisoner escape? Glad he was caught, and thanks for keeping us safe.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't really comment on that.
And just to clarify, the prison is run by Department of Corrections.
The prison is run by the Florida Department of Corrections, and their Inspector General's office will look into the mechanics of the escape in the institution, and then our investigators work with them as well to make sure anything that is outside the prison grounds. So that'll be more charges forthcoming. I guess I would say.
Melinda, common misconception is that a jail holds inmates, prison holds prisoners, if you're at a prison, you're sentenced to more than a year and a day.
Yeah, correct. 365 days or more to be in a state prison, right? Okay. And this individual had done the better part of 20 plus years, 25 years in prison. He'd been out one of those times in between, but he'd been in consistently, I think, for the previous 7 years, something like that. So he'd been there a while.
Okay. Don Shrimp. I'm sorry, Don. I'm not gonna get your last name. It's been a long week and it's only Tuesday.
Yeah, right.
How many MUIs have been issued in 2024 for teens along 30A?
What is that? What do you call it again?
MUI. Maybe he meant
minors in possession of alcohol.
Okay, maybe. Yeah.
I apologize. I don't know the number off the top of my head. We don't. It's not something I run every day, but there's quite a few.
Okay, if you're talking about minor in possessions, if you're talking about DUIs, that might. Yes, he's talking about minor in possession.
Okay, yeah, I don't know the number. I actually don't know the number off the top of my head.
Don, if you want to email us at PIO@WaltonSO, we can pull them for you. Tree Oliver Ross says, we have a fire warning, high winds, and fire zones are listed. How do I find my fire zone? And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you can go to Florida Forestry, and they have the fire zones on their website.
Correct. But it's been so dry right now. It's been a little bit without rain, so it's the wind blowing. It's getting there.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about something that we've been dealing with pretty regularly over the last 48 hours, which is we've had
missing
3
children.
Kids, go missing. 2 of them were on the beach, and then 1 was in the northern part of the county in Paxton. And then we also had a missing boater from over the weekend. All of them recovered, all safe.
Right.
But what are some tips for folks that may be in that predicament that are coming to visit or that?
So, well, you and I were talking about this before, and Tony, we were talking about this particularly with the beach. It's not uncommon for kids to walk away. I mean, that unfortunately happens. They can get confused. A lot of people on the beach, and and in some cases, there's some children that maybe have some special challenges, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One thing that always helps us is if you have a picture of them. So if you've snapped up, if you're dealing with a situation where you have a young child on the beach or a child that may have some challenges, it wouldn't hurt to go ahead and take a picture of what they look like that day.
Yeah, what they're wearing.
What they're wearing and whatnot. And that really helps us. It does make a difference, because sometimes the pictures can be old and they don't the kids don't actually look like that, or they're dressed so differently that it doesn't stand out for us. I will tell you that we're talking internally, and we're talking to some of the external support groups, stakeholders, in regard to how we can help. I'm going to say children, but really can be adults as well that face special challenges that maybe are ambulatory out in the public. What do I mean by ambulatory? I mean that they are able to walk around, bike on their own, maybe, and have some level of mobility and freedom. But they may could easily get confused or might need some assistance. And so we've got a group of, again, 4 or 5 people in our office that are working to try and say, okay, how can we help protect these families? And the problem is there's no perfect answer, right? We look at this. If I suggest, we're looking at something like the Sunflower program. I was telling Corey about this before, where
really,
maybe
really cool. Really
neat. Something maybe with GPS to help these parents or guardians for people that have children or adults, very similar to our Handle with Care, where we have a sticker on the back of the car, which I think is a good thing. But we're also looking for something that Mike can wear. Well, not every kid can wear, maybe a child with severe autism may not want anything touching their body, may not wear a lanyard or a bracelet. But we're going to try to find something that works. And I'm going to say this, and I'm not trying to be pessimistic, but I know there are people that will complain simply because we try something, right?
But we're not going to let.
But we're not going to let. We're not doing it for those people. There are literally people that look for a conspiracy or a complaint in everything we do. We were laughing beforehand about the Board of County Commissioner meeting because it's such a. It's here and there. What people are doing to disrupt progress, and I don't mean development. I'm talking about the progress of new ideas. You got to be thick-skinned enough to deal with this stuff, and we're just not going to let people's constant attempts for personal attention to take away what's in the best interest of these kids. So it may not be perfect. I guarantee you, whatever we're going to do is not going to be perfect. It could probably be done better. But we're going to do something, and we're going to do something that we hope benefits and helps these children. So if you have some thoughts about this, or if you're interested in maybe being engaged with us, shoot Corey an email. Like I said, we've talked to some folks at Neurodiversity, a group here in South Walton. We've talked with some folks at Westwood Ranch. We're going to talk with folks at ARC in Defuniak, and let's just see what we can do. By the way, that also could extend to dementia patients, right? TBIs, traumatic brain injuries. There's a lot of different people that are, have a level of independence, and we want to help them have more independence, but also protect them from other people. So anyway, that we're working on that. And I bring the other thing up because it sometimes gets a little frustrating when everything becomes an attempt to make a conspiracy or you hear people complain about what not being done and the failure to recognize that somebody's doing something. So we're going to help these kids one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I've heard you say you don't want to let perfect.
We're not going to let perfect get away with it. Yeah. Perfect's not going away better. It's a little bit like the fire guys. We're complaining that we got caught not doing what we're supposed to. Well, guess what? Do it and you won't have that problem. So.
Christine Bacon actually chimed in about this topic and said children and adults with delays. We use a Sharpie and wrote on an arm. It works great at Disney.
Yeah. And so we're looking for.
Thanks, Christine.
We've looked at something like a wristband. We thought that might be a possibility with certain information, maybe a certain color, but it needs to be visible to the public so somebody would maybe recognize it. We've talked about like as a runner's ID. We've talked about
Brian
a lanyard.
Campbell said air tags too.
Air tag, yeah, that's exactly. We're talking about some type of air tag, some version of that. Yeah. But there's not one answer for everybody, and we understand that. But we're not forcing somebody to do it. But for those parents that might give them a little bit of peace of mind, I think this is a good step, and we're going to try and get that up and running.
Yeah.
So if you want to be involved or you have ideas like that, don't hesitate to shoot us some emails. And
Ben Hall, who decides where flock cameras are placed?
Typically, it is our criminal intelligence unit and our patrol folks that make some kind of decision about what works best thoroughfare-wise.
And that was a big help to us.
Yeah, well, that helps us obviously with the escaped inmate.
Once we were able
to determine where the fire out. Where that vehicle was at, that made a huge difference.
Yeah. So we talked about our missing kiddos that we recovered from over the weekend. We had one at Morrison Springs. Let me just come over here. Our Packed Patrol diaper drive ends today, but that's not to say that carrying.
We'll still take it.
We will take them. Carrying and sharing of South Walton obviously they accommodate a lot of people in this area who need diapers. This is our second year doing this. If I don't have kids, but I was kind of shocked to learn how much diapers cost. They're expensive, and I can imagine if you've got multiple kids, it can put you in a bind. So if you have diapers, if you want to donate diapers, if you have some time, they have his Amazon wish list too, and that's on our Facebook page. But Caring and Sharing is a great organization, so we will take your diapers whenever you would like to drop them off. And then the next thing I want to talk about is our partnership with Advance Auto. We're announcing that tomorrow. Yeah. And that kind of looks like our deputies, when they see a minor equipment violation, like a headlight out or a tail light out, they conduct a traffic stop, and then Advance Auto is going to give us some gift cards to give to people so they can get their equipment.
In lieu of a citation, so they can get their product fixed.
Yeah.
I like that. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Good community partnership.
Yes. Corey Godwin said the profession of firefighter is rapidly evolving with more and more regulations, training, and equipment requirements at all level. And he put, here is one example of OSHA regulations that will dramatically impact volunteer and professional firefighters. And that those are new regulations that came down yesterday. Yeah,
that's the other thing too. We're trying to expand our volunteer corps here as well too. So if you have an interest in being a volunteer firefighter, Walton County Fire Rescue, reach out to us, shoot us an email. We'll put you in contact with Chief Pugh's folks and our volunteer coordinator for fire rescue here. And I think it's a great opportunity, for people to contribute and be involved, engaged in the community, and really make a difference. Those folks do good work. They're capable of doing good work, and we like it when they do.
Speaking of firefighters, I would be remiss, and Lindsay would probably hunt me down if I didn't mention our firefighter challenge coming up. That is on Saturday, November 9th. Why did you want to do that?
Well, I think there's a couple of things about the Firefighters Challenge. One is to kind of, first, it's a great recruitment for Walton County Fire Rescue, which we love that too. It's a great community event, but it also engages for the children and the young people to say, hey, look, this is a viable career. And it's a great opportunity for folks to see what the men and women of Walton County Fire Rescue are about. So I'm excited about it. I think it's a great event. Fair's ongoing this week too. Don't forget that this week. Also, our jail, I'll point something out. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but our jail is up for its 5th reaccreditation. So we're up to, 5 reaccreditations, which is what's called an Excelsior agency. In other words, you have been found examined by external auditors 4 times, and they have found no conditions. In other words, you have had what is essentially a flawless external audit of your operations. We just did a mock-up, a prep, but our final review will be in the next month or two, and we feel very confident that we're prepared for this because it's the way we do business every day, that once this is done, our jail is on path to receive Excelsior level accreditation. Our law enforcement operations will be reviewed year after. And so we're getting close. That will also be their Excelsior level review. So we got some really cool stuff going on there. That's important. It speaks to the quality because that's not me saying it. That's people externally coming in and looking at the way we do business and saying, yes, this is an exceptional organization. So I'm excited for our folks at the jail. They just do a heck of a job out there.
Yeah. That's a tough job.
That's an extremely tough job. Extremely tough job.
Yeah, and they're not always, out in the public getting praise. It's care, custody, and control of inmates, but they're kind of behind the wall, if you will.
Absolutely. They do such a good job both from the programmatically and, even to run, you're talking about running food service. You're running, one of the busiest kitchens around. They're serving 3 meals a day to hundreds of customers, shall we say. And there's a lot. I think that just doesn't get seen, which I hate that for those men and women that work. They do such a great job with it. But I'm excited for that Excelsior. I think they're fixing to get that Excelsior accreditation. It's pretty cool stuff.
You've talked about accreditation for a while, and I think, if I'm speaking plainly, that when people hear the word accreditation, they think it's just like a made-up word that is fancy and it helps you look good. Sure. But why do you believe in being an accredited agency? Why do you put so much time and effort in it?
Sure, because it's about professionalism, it's about stewardship of the public trust. It's about stewardship of the public money, and it is saying independently, not what the sheriff says, independently that other people come in and say, hey, you guys are doing this right. You're doing this right. I think that's important. I think that's a litmus. I think every jail, every law enforcement entity in the state of Florida should be accredited. I think we all should meet that as the minimum standard. I just do. I feel that way. Very similar to the way, you know, our EMS is medically accredited. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. You know, there's only a handful in the entire state of Florida, and we're one of them. So, yeah, I have just kind of a really high standard for this stuff. I think it's important. So,
yeah. We're caught up on questions. Cool. I'm not sure if there's anything else you wanted to mention. It's fall, and we have Halloween happenings coming up, fall festival.
Yeah, so we'll probably have Halloween, you know, obviously before we get back on the air again. There's going to be big events. There's typically big events at a couple different locations. One in the Phoenix Springs is going to be always big. One in Hammock Bay. You know, I know Destiny does a large one as well down there, and I know there are many. You know, have these fall festivals. It's a great time of the year. We just want to be careful. And the other thing is to remind people to slow down. You know, these kids, especially when we get around the night of Halloween, you know, let's just be slow and controlled and be thoughtful about it. You know.
Yeah.
So some important stuff. We're excited about that.
We've made some arrests. You and I kind of chatted about this, and we were kind of brainstorming on how we would like to tell the public how these investigations work. We've arrested some people here recently on child pornography charges.
Correct.
And sometimes when that tip comes in,
it's a long time.
It can take a long time to investigate it.
Sure.
And what the challenges are. And you and I talked about something that you called the CSI effect. And that's like a well-known term, especially in the law enforcement realm, about people's perception versus what reality is.
Absolutely. So it's this idea of what you can be, how something can be done and how quickly it can be done, right? And it's called the CSI effect, obviously, after the show, the Crime Scene Investigator, is that when you watch that show, they get DNA tests back within a day. They get fingerprints back within a day. You know, they don't have to get subpoenas and search warrants are signed immediately. The truth is, for things, I'm going to use an example, DNA, for instance, like on a burglary, which is a serious offense, can be a serious offense. It can be 9 months to a year before we get a DNA sample back, right? And think about this: you only can submit one at a time, one sample at a time from one crime. So if your burglary had 4 different areas of potential DNA, I can only submit one at a time. Wait 9 months. Next one, 9 months. And it's not always 9 months, but they can be extremely long. Now, for things like double murder and serious like that, they speed it up, and if we ask them, they call. But by and large, it's such a huge volume. DNA has become such a new thing that one of the big problems that the Department of Law Enforcement, I know, has struggled with over the years is even when they have the money to hire the staff, getting somebody trained, is having buildings big enough to put them in. You know, and so they just opened a new facility in Pensacola, which is certainly going to help. But this stuff takes a while. So in something like child pornography, or in this case, bestiality porn, or whatever the situation was, from the time you find out about it, you have to do subpoenas. And sometimes their subpoenas can take 6 months. I mean, it's not uncommon for Google or Snap, you know, some of those folks, and sometimes they fight the subpoenas. It takes longer to get them. You know,
or a subpoena gets kicked back.
Yeah, it kicks back. It can take a really long time. And so, you know, that's one of the things I think the public gets frustrated about. It frustrates us, quite frankly. I mean, we go, why does this take so long to get this back? It's just the nature of the technical aspect, particularly of cyber issues. You know, so you have to have a judge's permission. You have to have these things signed to get certain things. Now, like with this escaped inmate the other day, our subpoena for something we needed immediately was done within inside of an hour. We got that one done in an hour. Why? Because it's an imminent threat to the life safety of somebody else. I can't do that necessarily for grand theft. Somebody steals your car. That's going to be months and months and months. It's a problem for me because I know they're probably still stealing stuff, right? So, and it's a problem for you because you say, look, well, you've got this whatever sample. Why haven't you run it yet? So I get it. It's frustrating, but all of this stuff has to be done a certain way. If you don't do it right, there's actually another term for some of you folks that watch these shows. It's called fruit of the poisonous tree. What it means is when every cop knows that, you know, is when you do something incorrectly and you take in evidence without that subpoena or without an appropriate warrant, you cannot use the evidence. And it doesn't matter what it can be a body. You can't use it. So we have to do it a certain way.
Yeah. And we're going to, Captain Cosin and Criminal Investigations Bureau and our cybercrimes unit really does a yeoman's job at keeping after it. And I see people commenting on those arrests and they say, man, another one. And that really just speaks to the fact that they stay on it.
And it's a lot of work.
And it's so much work. And I just think that we need to put something together that gets the public a little bit more insight into why those investigations may take so long.
Yeah, that may be a good thing for maybe a standalone video or a podcast or some version of that, so we can try and just get this outside. This is the path that an investigation takes.
Yeah. Laura Lee Sparks, what is the status of the Jail Bridge program?
So, and I'm assuming she's meaning Pathway, our Pathways program. We have just brought in a new Pathways coordinator, so she's
I met
on
her
board.
today.
Yeah,
she's
so
fantastic.
So we just hired 2 staff members to kind of bring those people up and running. We're excited. We've got a 3-part program for those that you don't know. We have what's integration into the jail, where we evaluate what your need is. For instance, if it's substance abuse or mental health, to try and direct you into treatment for whatever that may look like, whether that's facilitating drug-assisted treatment or counseling or whatnot. The thing about a county jail, a lot of people, the average stay is 48 hours. People are not in county jails that long. However, we go ahead and do that assessment. For those people who have a little bit longer, what we're trying to do is this transition, this bridgeway out into the public so that we get people referred to their next treatment option, their next treatment modality. So if that's something like Lakeview, where they may want to follow up with counseling or follow up with drug treatment, we're trying to make sure that you get there once you're released from jail, and if appropriate, to make sure you have the appropriate medicine. So if you're on certain psychotropic medication, you can't just stop that. It can have a dramatic effect. So we're trying to make sure that you have those scripts when you walk out to get to the next doctor's appointment, and then trying to track that. We're doing it with a limited number of inmates right now, quite frankly, just to make sure that we're doing it right. There is a third part that we're working on that is all going to work together, which is we have now 6 deputies that are being trained to be essentially, for a lack of a better way of putting it, mental health deputies, where they are, when they come in contact with somebody who maybe has an ongoing substance abuse problem or a mental health issue, to try to keep them out of jail as the first option, is to try and get them into a treatment facility, try to get them to some kind of mental health facility, whatever the situation may be, so that they don't end up arresting them when what they really need is some level of treatment, right? Sure. If they commit a crime, we've got to deal with that. So I'm not saying not arrest people for committing crimes. I'm just saying if we come in contact with somebody who's in crisis, for instance, we've had to Narcan somebody or some version like that to try the best we can to get them to an immediate place of counseling, whatever the situation may be. All 3 of those programs, we kind of are calling that Pathways, because they really are 3 separate things. It's the initial intake in the jail and the people as they bridge out of the jail. And on the other end, they're going to be the deputies and the people in the street trying to stop them from going in. So it's going to be a coordination between those 3 entities to try and reduce the human suffering in regard to that.
But that's going to be take place in phases.
Yes. Well, 2 of them are ongoing now. So the bridgeway part of it in the jail with the lady that just came on board, and then Haley's already in place too. So we've got a couple folks up and running there now. So we're kind of excited about where that's going.
Yeah. Okay. Trey Oliver Ross, 30A street crossing warning lights are still not operational at Topsail State Park. I was told it's on the list to be updated. It's been 2 years. The bicycle warning crossing lights is what he's, and unfortunately, our
Public Works, that's a county road, so county
correct.
Public Works should be that. What we'll do is we'll shoot them an email when we get out of here and make sure that they're aware of that, and make sure that they're. I didn't know it'd been 2 years, but
okay. Laura Lee Sparks, how many people are Narcaned on average a month?
I would hate to give you that number because I would be wrong. It's a lot. Between us, South Walton, between us and all entities, it's a lot. I know I pulled it. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Some of them are multiple. So they're not necessarily. Some of them can be the same individuals again. So that's what we're trying to cut that down to.
Okay. Mike Johnson, why doesn't the sheriff ever wear a uniform?
So there's actually a reason for that, believe it or not. I don't wear a uniform a lot of times because people sometimes are less approachable, and I try to make it in a situation where that people feel comfortable. Sometimes people are intimidated, particularly for the executive, for the sheriff to be in a uniform. So I just think that I'm not one with 5 stars on my collar. That's just not my thing. But I try to put myself in a situation where I'm professional, but at the same time, that people feel comfortable in coming up and don't feel intimidated by what it is I wear. A uniform is important. It serves a very important role, but I also represent fire and EMS and animal control and, the jail and all these other entities. So that's really the reason why I do on occasion. I just don't do it a whole lot. I mean, a lot of times I'll wear a pullover when I'm here. Normally, I wear a suit or a shirt and a tie or some version of that.
Yeah.
It's a good question. My wife asked me the other day, why don't you wear a uniform often? It just really, because I feel like people a lot of times are more willing to come up and talk to me without it. So.
And listen, I feel like it's important to understand that this is like a philosophy.
Yeah, no, I made a decision about that.
Not everybody does it this way, and that doesn't make it right or wrong.
It's just this is the way. And one of it had to do originally when we came into office in 2008 was about professionalizing the organization. And so this is it's also a big business, right? It's a $100 million budget. It's a big business. And I wanted people to understand that we were going to run it that way. So it was really a very calculated decision. Uniform is easier. It would be much easier for me. I just tend not to do it a whole lot.
Yeah. Christine Bacon said, in Tennessee, we had a crisis intervention program that would bring in-home services to households to keep people, this was DCS, but could apply out of facilities. So something very similar.
Well, I'll tell you, so part of this also with the hospital, we've got I've actually met with the Department of Health, Holly Holt, who is the director of the county health department. We met this last week talking about opioids and how to reduce these kind of overdoses and addiction issues. I've got a meeting with Eddie Mansfield from Path of Grace next week, Thomas. We talk about this quite a bit about how to have the best impact you can. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that we're doing now is as our paramedicine program, right, with our home health care with that.
On the fire rescue side.
On the fire rescue side. I could see a time, by the way, we're one of the few in the state that actually does that, so it's kind of a super cool thing, but I could see a time in the future where those folks have that follow-up with somebody maybe that we Narcaned or, so I don't know. We're going to have to see how that works out. I want to make sure we do it right, I guess is the only way to say it.
Yeah. Okay, so somebody had a great question, and I wanted to make sure I got to it. On YouTube, Redneck Philosopher is his username. Is there a way to find out ahead of time when the range is open to civilians? I keep seeing the signs the day of. So those are our civilian and advanced firearms courses.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And they're posted on our website. All of the dates that are available are posted on our website. They're classes. So it's not necessarily that we open the range to the public.
Well, let me tell you why we don't open the range to the public, really, quite frankly, because we have multiple private ranges open to the public. So it's kind of a business here. So like Bullets and Bones and Defuniac and some of those places. I don't want to get in the business of competing with them. I want them to have their opportunity as well, too. What we do is specific to the concealed weapon classes and a firearm familiarization after that. So,
okay. Laura Lee Sparks says, what's a lot? I think it's important for people in the community to be aware of these problems and the numbers associated. So many have no clue, but would be willing to help if they did know. Mm-hmm. And then Mark Holmes is asking, what is the sheriff's office turnover rate?
Yeah, we're about 13%, so we're right around the national, little below the national average for law enforcement agencies as a whole. That always just feels like a lot to me. It just does, but that's nationally average. I know we were talking to our HR about it the other day and comparing across the nation. We're about where everybody else is at. We're certainly not higher than anybody else, but I just don't like it, We got a lot of people that don't like being in this profession, and this is not the profession for them, and so be it. And that's, by the way, that's true whether it's fire rescue, whether it's dispatch, or whether it's the jail, or being a deputy on the road. So that's about where we're at. About 13.
I did just get a text message from our EMS chief, our assistant fire chief, who said in the last 12 months, there have been 166 overdoses according to the state EMS data repository, with 5 deaths. In 2023, there were 396 with 9 deaths. You and I have talked about in the past.
Say those numbers again. So I want to make sure.
In the past 12 months, there have been 166 overdoses according to the state EMS data repository, with 5 deaths.
Okay.
So
166.
Yep.
And the year before was
396 with 9 deaths.
So we've had basically almost a 60% decrease in ODs. I'm not sure that
you and I have talked in the past.
I don't think
numbers are tough, right?
Yeah,
because we're responding medically, number one, and our deputies don't determine cause of death. It's almost impossible.
Well, it's also separate. So it's all right, but just from a standpoint of just the straight ODs, that not people that die. Overdose does not mean death. So we got to make sure we're clear about that.
Correct.
So
which impacts the numbers, right?
I think the deaths associated with OD is higher than 5. I know what they're saying. I understand the state numbers. I just anecdotally, my gut tells me it's higher than that.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty dramatic reduction, quite frankly, from 396 to 166.
And we have 2 months left of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea it had to reduce that much. I was going to say 400 this year, but actually it's nowhere close to that.
Yeah. So. And I think it's tough, right? Because that 166 on the year, that doesn't sound, but like everything is relative. Like to me, 30 sounds like a lot. Like that is 30 times somebody
your child,
overdoses.
It's too much.
Yes,
right?
Anybody,
it's just too
I
much.
feel like those numbers are really relative.
That's what scares me a little about saying numbers, because if you tell somebody that we've had a 50 to 60% reduction in ODs in the last year, which the state says that we have, that doesn't measure human suffering, right? And it also doesn't. When you say 166, you reduce people to numbers.
Yeah.
And it always worries me when you start reducing people to numbers.
Yeah.
And I'm a numbers guy. For most things, that's what
Well, and here's the thing, and this is kind of what I was trying to get across, is that because you don't know the numbers doesn't mean you're not recognizing that it's a problem. Mm-hmm. It's a problem. I think that's pretty, I think
it's pretty obvious.
It's obvious at this point. Mark Holmes, I asked the question about Sheriff's Office turnover. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. He also said, thank you for getting the posse guard a stop sign so we can see him. Nice. Super pumped. They do a great job out there. We did just get a request from someone, though, who's still concerned about when they direct traffic at Seacoast. And I was under the impression that somebody was there every morning. And I don't know, is that different than the high school, Tony? Do they run that different than the high school?
It is different because Seacoast comes in through a sort of a roundabout in a neighborhood, and they and they roll through slowly and drop off. They're not coming right off of 331 and into Greenway Trail, where they have usually 2 deputies out there directing traffic.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so Mark just said, and he's right. So it's JD Miller and 98 where they're coming into Seacoast, right?
They may enter it off of 98, but it's not like it's right adjacent to the school like it is on 331 for the high school.
Yeah. Okay. So that might be tough. But I do remember reading somewhere where they were asking, hey, is it possible to get somebody here directing traffic? Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to catch back up. I'm trying to. Trey said, thank you for the community update.
Awesome.
Kelly and Lori Penton, what is your opinion on Amendment 3? And what are you doing about the opiate crisis? And we literally were just talking about that. But
we just ran
you said in the past you don't like giving your opinion on amendments because at the end of the day, we're law enforcement.
We're going to
public safety.
We're going to follow what the law is, right, across the board. So I have a personal opinion on it. I'm just not going to get out there in front of it. It's kind of the same way I feel about whether when gambling was on the ballot a few years ago and other things like that. We're going to deal with whatever comes about. We're going to try and be as reasonable as we can. I think for some of these things, I'm careful to voice an opinion about. It could be misconstrued from whatever I said in any way, shape, or form. So
and here's the deal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because we're gonna deal with it anyway. So
okay.
It's not me trying to get out. I'm just I try to be a little careful about that. I think most people are adults and can decide for themselves what's whether or not all this is about governmental. What the scope of your freedoms are, what you think is appropriate, what you want in your community, and you got to decide that. Mm-hmm. That's not really my place.
Sure. Dan Curry, just wanted to say thanks to Lieutenant Smith and Lieutenant Wendell for attending 2 community meetings with me. Look forward to many more in the future. Both events had great turnout.
Fabulous. I'm glad to hear that.
They're both are just like consummate professionals. Yeah. So I'm really excited to see where those and we've had community meetings in the North End. We've had community meetings in the South End. Those are becoming pretty regular, and I think people are happy to see those come about. Shannon Lynn Caps, can you update us on Liberty and Argyle fire departments and recap for us what you'd like to see happen with those departments? We actually talked about that in the beginning.
We kind of went over it, but I'll just very, very shortly. What I'd like to see them do is be able to meet the issues outlined in the POW report, that they meet certain standards. And I think my take on it, they're both working to do that, to try and get those accomplished. What we've said is we've committed to do that, to help them in whatever way possible to reach that facility, to reach that level. And I think that's the minimum. I think that's what needs to be done. So I feel like that's progress. I know Chief Pugh has met with them. Chief Pugh, who is Chief of Walton County Fire Rescue, tried to go over and offer some assistance, and we'll offer some help with equipment or training or whatever's needed from that standpoint. It is in it's in everybody's best interest for us all to meet these level standards.
Okay. And like I said, Shannon, we talked about it in the beginning a little bit more in depth. Somebody asked about it earlier.
But I am going to hold feet to the fire on that. So I don't want to, say anybody's not true. You're going to meet those standards one way or the other.
Okay. And then, so we're wrapping up here. I think we've covered everything that we want to talk about. Tony, have you heard anything out in the community that you want to address or that you want to give?
It's SRD time.
It's SRD time.
Well, I would just like to request and remind people that when they're driving in a school zone or in a neighborhood where they're close to a school, that we all need to get where we're going safely. It's not going to do anybody any good to get into a road rage situation or try to cut a corner through a gas station to try and alleviate waiting at a light. Just relax. We'll all get to work.
Alexis Fox 350.
Oh, his radio's going off.
No longer active for Alexis Fox 350.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention, though, that Sergeant Josh Bennett did text me earlier and say that they're still having issues with people stopping at the school bus that drops kids off on 98. And especially where there isn't a median separating and there's 6 lanes of traffic. Right. It was eye-opening for people who didn't know the differences, right? When there's a concrete barrier, when there's no barrier, when there's 2 lanes versus 3 lanes, if there's 1 lane each way. And I think at the end of it, we just need to be really cautious. But there was a lot of talk about why is there buses stopping on Highway 98? Yeah. And I think it's important for people to remember there's kids that go to school that live along 98, and it's not really convenient, or in some cases even possible for a bus to turn into those neighborhoods. Correct. They wouldn't be able to turn around. There would be no way to get in and out. So that's on our Facebook page under our reels and on our Instagram, and we posted it. And there's basically a drawing that kind of outlines.
Yeah, explains everything and kind of in detail and what the circumstances are.
And school's still in session.
Yeah, so that's one thing that we're really blessed with, and I'll say this with Tony sitting here as an SRD. We have such a great relationship with the Walton County School District, right? I mean, I talk to Mr. Hughes and his staff regularly. Charlie Morris, their security folks over there. It's not like that everywhere, quite frankly. I mean, but it is here. And they know if they call us and they want something, we're going to try and find a way to give it to them. And conversely, because we all have the same end goal, which is the well-being of these children. And so we just try to look after it, and we got some big football games still coming up locally.
Yes, we do.
Rivals. So,
some rivalry
we tried to make sure that, and we're at the, if you're in our fire rescues north of the bay at sporting events, South Walton Fire District is, their ambulance services down there south of the bay. So, I mean, everybody's involved in this, and everybody's got the same end goal in mind, which I think is so important.
Yeah. Matt and Chantel, and we'll end with this. We're caught up on questions, and it's 6:30. We've been on about an hour. Matt and Chantel Arnold said, I want to say thank you for the step up of patrol on Chat Holly. It's so busy lately, and people just speed up, and they're basically saying thank you for the step up. We don't hear that a lot, but we are glad that you're recognizing it, and thanks for the kind words and reaching out. I think when people don't see it, it doesn't exist to them.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's hard, right? Like you may drive to work and not see a single deputy. I drive to work and I see 10.
Yeah.
And I feel like we appreciate you guys reaching out.
Absolutely.
And just saying thank you. We get way more, surprisingly, we get a lot of compliments. We really get more compliments than we do criticism, especially about our deputies. So anything else you want to cover, Sheriff?
No, just there's a lot of things going on, but you're really just the safety around the Halloween, I think, is important. And I would invite everybody out to come watch the Firefighter Challenge. I think in November 9th, I think it's going to be a great weekend event. It's a great first event to get started. We hope that's going to be an annual thing past
in Hammock Bay.
In Hammock Bay. We're excited about it. We're going to, our fire rescue staff is excited about it. It's good stuff. Everything else is all good. If you need something, call us. Shoot us an email if we didn't answer your question or something you have. Can't guarantee you'll like the answer. I guarantee you'll get one. So